Do you take sinus meds like Benadryl, sleep aids like Unisom, bladder control drugs like Detrol and Ditropan, anxiety meds like Xanax and Valium? If so, you need to pay attention. But the list goes on. It includes motion sickness meds like Dramamine, heartburn aids like Prilosec and Nexium, pain meds like morphine and oxycodone. Even common meds like ibuprofen and Tylenol have been associated with higher risks of dementia. Just how serious are these risks? Should you stop taking them? I'll explain the research and the surprising finding about statins and their possible impact on dementia. Hey, thanks for watching. I'm Lorenzo. I'm a dementia care professional with over 20 years experience. In 2014, the Alzheimer's Foundation of America named me the Dementia Care Professional of the Year in the United States. I've cared for my mom and I've worked with hundreds of clients ravaged by this disease. Let's get into it. It's a fact that some common meds increase our risk for dementia. I'll go category by category and explain the research behind each one. I'll also provide the reference links in the video description in case you want to do a deeper dive. The first group of meds are acid blockers, also known as proton pump inhibitors. They're used to treat heartburn and acid reflux. The proton pump is the system in our stomach's lining that produces stomach acid. This is an aside, but I always wondered why they called it a proton pump. And the reason boils down to simple chemistry. Acids are formed by hydrogen ions. Hydrogen is the simplest element, and a hydrogen ion is actually just one single proton. So our stomachs create acidity by pumping hydrogen ions or protons into our stomach. But by inhibiting the proton pump, this class of drugs reduces the acid in your stomach. As this note from the National Library of Medicine confirms, they are often the first line of defense that your doctor might recommend if you have ulcers, esophagitis, GERD, and other acid congestions. Popular drugs in this class include Nexium, Prilosec, and Prevacid. This study determined that people taking PPI meds had a 38% greater risk of developing any form of dementia and a 44% greater risk of developing Alzheimer's. And there are many other studies with similar results. This report proved that the active ingredient used in Prevacid was directly related to increased amyloid beta in the brains of mice. Now you probably know that amyloid beta is the misfolded protein that develops in the brains of virtually all cases of Alzheimer's. The presence of amyloid beta does not confirm that you'll have Alzheimer's, but it's definitely not a good sign. The next class of drugs is called benzodiazepines. These are prescribed for various neurological disorders, and they include meds like Xanax, Ativan, Klonopin, and Valium. Benzodiazepines work by enhancing the effect of a chemical in our brains called GABA. It's like a brake pedal for our nervous system. GABA slows things down and promotes calmness and relaxation, and this class of drugs, benzodiazepines, makes the braking action more effective. But studies have shown that prolonged use may lead to confusion and cognitive impairment. This study found that your odds of dementia were 78% higher if you used benzodiazepines compared with those who don't. And these results have been corroborated by many other studies like these. There are a bunch of reasons why benzodiazepines might lead to cognitive decline. Some scientists say that because they enhance the activity of GABA, they might interfere with normal brain function, leading to brain damage. Others say that they could affect the activity of mitochondria, which are responsible for energy production, and that this could lead to brain cell death. While these relationships have not been confirmed, it's safe to assume that when we take in chemicals that specifically affect our brains, we will likely have side effects. Right now, you are probably saying that an increased risk does not guarantee that you'll get dementia, because correlation doesn't equal causation. And that is 100% correct. But the fact is that no one knows for sure what causes dementia in any one person. The possible exception is head trauma. It's pretty well established that if you get hit in the head hard enough to cause brain damage, that you'll have dementia, because that's what dementia is, brain damage. For everything else, it's a question of risks. We'll often say that a diet high in sugar and highly processed carbs will lead to dementia, but people might have a 90-year-old father who eats cookies and candy bars all day long and is as sharp as a tack. So all this guidance is correct, but it just may not apply to you. I have a friend who spent years doing studies like these and getting FDA approval for drugs. He put it this way: these big observational studies, like the ones we're talking about in this video, organize people into groups. They match them as closely as possible based on age, diet, genetics, health history, and other factors, so those groups are well defined. Then they take one factor, in this case, taking a drug or not, to see how it affects the risks of dementia. When so much correlation is established and there is no other reason that's obvious why people might have dementia, it's worth paying attention to the risks so you can decide for yourself. My personal attitude is that if many studies show that the risk exists, I'm going to think twice before taking such a drug for a long period of time. And I'll check with my doctor about possible side effects. The next class of drugs is a huge category that has shown a strong likelihood of dementia in many studies. Sinus drugs and sleep aids like Benadryl, Advil PM and Unisom, antidepressants like Elavil and Pamelor, bladder meds like Detrol and Ditropan. There are many drugs in this category. These meds are called anticholinergics. They block the action of acetylcholine, a brain chemical crucial for learning and memory. Acetylcholine levels are often low in individuals with Alzheimer's, making the effect of these drugs especially troubling. This study concluded that chronic use of anticholinergic drugs could double your risk of dementia. And this study said that your risk of dementia increases by 46%. And there are many more studies with similar conclusions. You might have a valid reason for taking these meds and are wondering if you're getting into trouble. Well, here are some important thoughts. Pretty consistently, research shows that the dementia risk increases the longer you take the drug. So if you do it for a few months, it's not nearly as bad as if you do it consistently for many years. Research also shows that the impact is greater the older you are. And this makes sense because as we age, our brains are less resilient. So if you're in your 30s, the impact will be less than if you're in your 70s. Not all anticholinergic drugs are the same. Some have a stronger impact than others. There's a really valuable website called acbcalc.com. Type in the name of your drug and they'll give you a rating of 1 to 3. 1 means that the anticholinergic effect is modest, and 3 means that it's strong. As much as possible, you want to avoid the ones that are rated 3. It's also well established that no one thing actually causes dementia. Rather, it's a bunch of stuff we do over several years of our lifetime. So if you take these meds, there's lots of other things you can do to keep your brain strong, including good nutrition, regular exercise, and sleep. See other videos in my channel that explain these many things you can do to keep your brain as fit as possible. Now, long-term use of pain meds, especially opioids, have been linked to dementia. But researchers are trying to figure out if this is due to the drugs themselves or the effects of chronic pain. Opioids, especially ones like oxycodone, hydrocodone, codeine, and morphine, are so helpful if you have pain, if you have a long-term injury, if you're recovering from surgery or fighting cancer. These are valuable products. But their association with dementia is pretty consistently demonstrated. This study showed that a long-term opioid use was associated with a 13% higher risk of dementia. And this study, calculated among people 75 years or older, showed that opioid use was associated with a 39% increased risk of dementia. Opioids are super powerful chemicals, so you wouldn't be surprised that they might affect your brain health. But more troubling is the fact that even over-the-counter pain meds like ibuprofen, Advil, Aleve, and even Tylenol are associated with higher dementia risk. This study looked at over 2,700 people with an average age of 75. They found that heavy users of NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like Advil, ibuprofen, and Aleve, showed a 66% greater likelihood of developing dementia. And this study looked at people 40 and older. While they didn't find evidence for an increased risk of Alzheimer's, they found that regular NSAID use increases your risk for vascular dementia by 33%. Again, the impacts were more evident the longer you took the drugs and the larger the doses. And what about Tylenol? This is in everybody's medicine cabinet, and we all take one if we have a headache. Unfortunately, long-term use is indeed associated with higher risks of dementia. This study looked at over 200,000 people above the age of 60. They found that regular use of Tylenol increased the risk of dementia by 18%. And this study concluded that regular use of Tylenol was associated with a 20% increased risk of dementia. I'm sure many of you are saying right now, is this for real? I take painkillers on a regular basis because I have headache and body aches, and sometimes I have pain that needs to be managed. Again, correlation does not mean causation, and there are a couple of ways of looking at this. One possible explanation is that all these meds affect our gut microbiome, and this is what leads to dementia. The link between our intestinal health and brain health is proven, and scientists are learning more about this each day. As this study showed, the microorganisms in our stomachs are directly related to the development of dementia by triggering metabolic illnesses and low-grade inflammation. Another possible explanation is that people who are in constant pain have a lot of health issues going on. If they're in pain, it's probably due to inflammation. And dementia broadly is inflammation of the brain. So maybe because of their poor health and inflammation, these folks are destined to have dementia anyway. The important takeaway is that any drug we put into our bodies is going to have some side effects. And finally, what about statins? A lot of people in my YouTube community voice the belief that statins lead to dementia. And this is where I was surprised. In 2012, the FDA issued a safety announcement about statins and possible side effects on brain health. They had reviewed reports of cognitive issues including memory loss, confusion, and disorientation, all linked to statin use. But they said that the cardiovascular benefits of statins far outweighed these potential brain health risks. What I personally find troubling about statins is that they lower cholesterol, and cholesterol plays a really important role in brain health. It's crucial for brain development and function. Cholesterol in our brains provides structural integrity and fluidity, allowing for proper cell signaling and communication. It is also essential for the formation and maintenance of myelin, which is the fatty substance that insulates neurons and helps transmit electrical signals correctly. Approximately 1/4 of the body's total cholesterol sits in the brain, and this indicates how important cholesterol is for a healthy brain. I have slightly high cholesterol, and my doctor told me I should take statins. But for this specific reason, I have elected not to. But my goal in my videos is to provide helpful information based on research, and the fact is that most of the research I found says that statins actually lower your risk of dementia. This study that came out in The Lancet concluded that people 50 and older who were prescribed statins had a 71% lower risk of developing dementia compared to those who didn't. And this study looked at over 57,000 people and found that people who took statins had a 38% reduced risk for dementia. And this study concluded that use of statins was associated with a reduced risk of all forms of dementia by 15%. Like I said, this surprised me a lot. It wasn't until I did a deep dive on statins and dementia that I came up with these results. Based on this, I'm thinking about taking statins, but I'm going to do more research. And if I come up with anything worthwhile, I will put it into one of my next videos. Even if you take the meds that we've discussed here, it's not too late to protect your brain. The most powerful tactic we have is a diet loaded with brain-healthy foods, like the ones I talk about in this next video. Make these foods part of your regular diet and you'll be bulletproofing your brain against Alzheimer's and dementia. Thank you so much for watching, and please see all the videos in my channel devoted to how you can take the best care of yourself and your loved ones.